Rising interest rates have been causing investors to sell their technology shares, and small business accounting software company Xero is no exception. Its shares are down about 40% this year. But Chief Executive Steve Vamos says the world is still in the early stages with cloud accounting software, and there are plenty of opportunities in the market for Xero's system. I caught up with Steve on the sidelines of Xerocon, a conference in Sydney that attracted thousands of customers.
Well, Xerocon is a big conference that we run. Used to run every year, and we're glad to be back on that cycle where we bring our accounting and bookkeeping partners together to really talk about what we've achieved and what the future looks like for really making sure that we continue to drive digital technology and software in to support the small business sector.
How important is events like this for Xero with building up your brand and finding and retaining customers?
Well, look, I think the innovations that Xero represents really start with moving accounting into the cloud. We were the first to do that and first to do it in New Zealand, and really encourage accountants and bookkeepers to work a different way to connect with their small business clients in real time through the cloud software that provided much better insight to the performance of a small business, to the areas where they need to focus. So it is really important because this is the embodiment of what makes Xero different and special. It's that partnership. It's about the more than 1,000 applications that connect to Xero. Being able to walk the exhibition floor and see the amazing range of solutions for small businesses of different kinds is really encouraging as well. So it's really about putting energy into the system to say the job's not done. We've still got a long way to go to get more and more small businesses benefiting from what Xero and other cloud software solutions can do for them.
Yeah, how challenging is it to get a bookkeeper that's set in their old ways to shift to start thinking about using the cloud?
Look, it varies. You know, we've got people in this audience that were right there at the very beginning when Xero wasn't even a complete solution because they're very innovative. It's very much a human thing. We all respond or think differently about change. And so we've got the innovators, and then we've got, through COVID, a lot of firms that adopted Xero because now they had to work in the cloud. They couldn't physically connect with their client base. So, you know, we have seen an acceleration in adoption through what happened in COVID. And what we have to really do now is make sure that those adopters and the small business clients they have really get the full benefit of the software that we're providing.
So how many years into this adoption of cloud accounting software are we? Are we at the early stages?
I believe we're, if you want to compare it to, say, consumer internet, we're sort of where consumer internet and what it was like for us when we were using the internet back in the late 2000s. So there's been about a decade of really solid adoption, but there's a long way to go. This is the last frontier, is making sure small business benefits the way consumers do, the way that large enterprises have, is really what we're about, is to bring the benefit of technology to that sector. Yeah,
your software gives you a lot of insights into what businesses are thinking. What do you see as some of the big challenges that businesses are facing at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think that they're pretty well documented right now. Inflationary pressures, certainly for small business, getting paid faster is a real key issue because, right now, in a sense, they're funding late payments through their working capital and other means. And at the end of the day, what we want to do, and through Xero, what they can do is get paid faster and make that process more efficient. So really managing cash flow is important. Getting access to people and staff is also another one of the things that many small businesses are challenged with right now. It is an interesting time, that's for sure.
How big a deal do you think skills shortages are for those small businesses?
Look, I think that at the moment, the sense we get is that it is a significant concern. I think that, just anecdotally as well, when you look at the way that many small businesses are changing their trading times to adapt to the staff they have available. So I think it is a real concern.
When you look at your overall suite of clients, what's the big sort of clients for you? Is it those bookkeepers? Who is it?
Well, it's really two-sided in that we work with accountants and bookkeepers to get them to streamline their workflows, and by doing that, they encourage their small business clients to use Xero. And then, once those small business clients are using Xero, there's a whole range of applications and services on show here at Xerocon that they can use to really go further to make their business even more efficient.
And there's obviously those inflationary pressures you've talked about. Are you seeing any signs of businesses being under a lot of financial stress or starting to go under?
Yeah, look, at this stage, a little bit early in the cycle to see that. So I think not overwhelmingly at this point, but we obviously keep a close watch on that.
You've also got obviously operations in the UK, North America, as well as Australia, New Zealand. There's inflation in the UK and the United States is a bit higher than Australia. Are there any big sort of differences you can see between those economies?
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting, that many of these trends are consistent around the world, and I think that's maybe a reflection of globalisation, but also the fact we're all coming out of a couple of years of living in a pandemic world. So I think there are many of those trends, to different degrees, they vary, but they're generally very similar.
We saw the Reserve Bank lift interest rates in Australia this week. Is that making it more difficult for companies to access capital with the cost of funding going up?
Yeah, look, it's a bit hard to say generally in that context, but one thing we do know is that small business has always been challenged in getting access to capital. And one of the things we're innovating in is exactly that space with a company we acquired called Waddle. We're looking at innovative ways to enable small businesses to get access to capital in a much more efficient way that wasn't possible before when they weren't using technologies like Xero.
The technology sector's been under pressure this year. Nasdaq's down more than 20%. Xero still keeps hiring and growing. What's the big differences with you guys?
Well, look, I think when you look at the size of the opportunity we have, you've got to think long term. And even in tough economic circumstances, the one thing we do know is that what we have to offer benefits the accountant, the bookkeeper and the small business that use it. So that enables them to be more efficient and deal with challenging circumstances even more effectively. So we retain a growth mindset, and we also retain a long-term mindset when we look at our business and its settings.
Your financial year started on the 1st of April. How's it been tracking?
It's a bit early to say. We'll certainly talk more about that when we get to our results in November. But overall, as we said at our AGM, from a revenue perspective, we're on track.
And I looked and saw customer churn internationally seems a bit higher than Australia, New Zealand. What's the big differences there?
The difference is really the profile. So if you look at the adoption of cloud accounting in Australia and New Zealand, we are world leaders. I mean, this is actually a really fascinating story. The collaboration between Xero, our partners, financial services sector in Australia and the government, which has been a real supporter of digitisation, has meant the environment here for adoption is well ahead of the rest of the world. So the way to look at it is that in other markets around the world, we're not as far down the journey, and so there are more newer clients coming on board and learning to really get the benefits of cloud accounting.
My Uber driver today also works as a barber and did have Xero for about a year, but then he changed to a competitor because he said it was cheaper and less complicated to use. How tough is the competition in this space? Yeah, look,
competition is an interesting reference point always, but in a marketplace like ours, which is so undeveloped and so underpenetrated, most of the challenges are, of your own making. So, we're constantly looking at how we can do better, and it's disappointing occasionally for a customer to hear that. But the interesting thing is that Xero is, to this point, an accounting solution. And some more simple, expenses type programs are out there. In fact, we just launched in the UK a product aimed exactly at that audience, which is called Xero Go. So we're testing that and learning from that experience in the UK, and that'll give us something more suitable for someone that has very, very basic needs.
And just how big is the opportunity out there in this cloud space?
I think it's massive. I think when you look at the number of small businesses that are out there around the world and how many are actually getting benefit from this technology, you're seeing a massive potential for growth.
Well, Steve Vamos, Chief Executive at Xero, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good to see you.